So Barney the dinosaur purposefully knocked the cup of water off the table. Baby Bop the dinosaur makes Barney clean the water. Then Baby Bop knocks a cup of water on the floor 4 more times, and Barney has to clean those spills up too. This is likely A, contingent exercise, B, response interruption and redirection, C, positive practice overcorrection, or D, restitutional overcorrection. This is C, positive practice overcorrection. This one is really just asking us to identify with this scenario what the definition is, right? Like, what definition does this fit? So when we're thinking about what is this question asking me, it's saying which of these, when we read through the answers, it's saying which of these fits this scenario. And so in our scenario, I used Barney and Baby Bop, and you'll notice I don't use clinical examples when I'm talking about punishment procedures because I'm just not going to do that. So for this question, Barney knocks off the water on assumably on purpose. I love that the word purposely is here because we don't really know, right? Only Barney knows that. But Baby Bop assumes that purposely the cup was knocked off the table. And so Barney has to clean the water, and the Baby Bop fills up cups of water, places them on the table, and knocks them onto the floor. And then Barney has to clean up each of those spills too. So what this is positive practice over correction. So we're essentially doing the correct form of the behavior in cleaning up the water when we spill it over and over again. So to give you a good understanding of why these others are incorrect. So contingent exercise is an unrelated behavior. So it's like if I hit you and then I have to do 20 jumping jacks, that's contingent exercise. The jumping jacks have nothing to do with the fact that I did hitting. Whereas positive practice overcorrection is like whatever I did wrong, quote unquote, we're going to redo that over and over again. We're repeatedly performing the correct form of the behavior. So where I've seen this used well in educational settings is if you've ever seen like a kindergarten teacher at the beginning of the school year, they'll be like, line up class. And then of course it's kindergartners. So it's just like a herd of cats, not in a line, crawling the walls or not doing lining up. And then the teacher will do it like 10 times. They'll be like, line up class. And then everybody gets in line. And then it's like, line up class, and everybody gets in line, right? This is when we're required to do a response that's topographically related to the target behavior. We want them to line up, and we don't want them to do all those regular kindergarten things when they're asked to line up. So by practicing the behavior, we actually get practice in doing that behavior, and it functions as a punishment because the class doesn't want to line up 10 times. And so if we see a decrease in that behavior in the future, then we can say that it functioned as punishment. But just having to repeatedly do the correct form of the behavior innately teaches because we're just getting a lot of practice doing it, right? So that's positive practice over correction. But as you can see, this is terrible modeling. Like Baby Bop's just putting water on the table and swatting it. You're literally modeling the thing that you don't want that person to do. You're doing it over and over again. And I've actually seen this in practice. I worked in a school with a teacher who the child swept a puzzle from the table onto the floor. And I watched the teacher pick up the puzzle, make the child do the puzzle, the same puzzle, like 10, 15 times. And each time the teacher would then swipe the puzzle onto the floor and scream at the kid to get on the floor and pick up the puzzle. It was horrible. It was horrible to watch. It was horrible for me to experience. I can't even imagine what it was like for the kid to experience. But the worst part is it was just terrible modeling. So you were mad because the kid swept the puzzle on the floor with their hand. And so then you swept the puzzle 10 more times. You modeled that behavior 10 times. How is that communicating an appropriate behavior? And this is the issue with like aversive procedures, right? Is it taking into account the environmental factors that aren't working for this kid? That puzzle is terrible. So in the example of the puzzle that I saw swept on the floor, that puzzle was like 3 levels too low for that kid, which I knew because I worked with that kid independently. And so the kid was probably bored. It was a 5-piece puzzle, and I've watched her do 40-piece puzzle and also 2-digit math. So no, she doesn't want to do a 5-piece puzzle. So it's like, did you think about your materials? Did you think about the fact that the kid was covering their ears as soon as they swept the puzzle off? Like maybe something in the room isn't working for that kid. Is that sound, the sound that's just present in the room, appropriate for that kid? Is the lighting working for that kid? Is a noise that somebody else in the class making not working for that kid? Like, are we checking in on that, or are we just applying a procedure to try to decrease the behavior? Are we thinking about the fact that behavior is communication? So if a kid is sweeping the puzzle off the table, they are communicating to you that that is not working for them. Why would we not investigate why it's not working? Why would we just diminish a communicative behavior, especially without giving it a replacement? Like, the appropriate thing to do would be like, wow, it seems like you really didn't like that puzzle. If you don't like something, here's a stop button that you can touch, and then we're going to change activities because it seems like you don't like that. Now we're giving an alternative communication option. We're not doing the aversive punishment procedure. And we've empowered that person to tell us what works and what doesn't work for them. It's a whole lot better than just giving a punishment procedure. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll stop. Soapbox. Correction. Restitutional overcorrection is the other side of this box. That's fixing the environment and then making the environment vastly better than it was before. So, like, if I knocked over a bookshelf and the bookshelf prior to this was just like a bunch of books on the shelf, and then instead of just cleaning it up, I had to clean it up and alphabetize it, then we would say that's restitutional overcorrection. I've improved that environment by the action that I've taken. And again, for it to be overcorrection at all, it has to be logically related to the target behavior. So if I knock over the bookshelf and then I have to go clean and organize a table, that's not restitutional overcorrection. That's contingent exercise. I'm having to do something else that's unrelated to the target behavior. But if I'm trying to decrease knocking over the bookshelf, and so you knocked over the bookshelf and I make you clean it up and alphabetize it, then that's restitutional overcorrection. So response interruption and redirection is usually on stimming behavior, which I could go on a whole thing about that because it usually is interrupting someone's stimming behavior and then doing high P request sequence. So essentially, you're giving them things that you know that they know how to do and that they've done before many times before. And then you're adding reinforcement after each of those and then essentially getting them back on task. But you were interrupting their self-stimulatory sequence as it happens. Usually it's with verbal self-stimulatory behavior. It can actually be with physical self-stimulatory behavior, but either way, why are we intervening on self-stimulatory behavior? Again, self-stimulatory behavior is a coping mechanism when what we need is not what we're given in an environment. And so if someone is doing self-stimulatory behavior, I'll give you an example of one that I do often. I bite my nails when I'm bored, when I'm forced to sit still, or when something is not working for me, like if I have to sit in like a long lecture, right? All of you are probably doing some self-stimulatory behavior right now too, because you're having to just sit and listen to me. You're probably clicking a pin or twiddling your foot or doing something else, but you're doing that because you're being forced to essentially do something that doesn't work for you in some capacity. So when we know that self-stimulatory behavior is occurring, why are we not actually taking the time to figure out what in the environment isn't working for that person? And why are we not just honoring their coping mechanism? Like, why do we need it to change? Is it actually unsafe for them? Is it actually unsafe for other people? Or is it just make us more comfortable for them not to do it? And if it makes us more comfortable, that's a pretty ableist reason to intervene. And then the last one is contingent exercise, which is that unrelated. So contingent exercise is when you're asked to do something that's unrelated to the target behavior directly following the target behavior. And again, all of these are meant to be a form of positive punishment. They only function as positive punishment if they actually decrease the behavior. And I have very rarely, extremely rarely, ever see any of these work, even temporarily. And almost always when they do work, it's for some other reason. So I once worked in a classroom where, like, when a kid hit a peer, they got to go out in the hallway and do like push-ups. So these contingent, they had like wall push-up spaces. So their paraprofessional would lead them outside and say 20 wall push-ups or you can't go back to class. First off, they hated class. It was easy to see from anybody who's in the space with them. So it was like, how's that working? Because you took away class. Like, you probably negatively reinforced this, to be honest with you. You took away class when they hit. And they're hitting more often. So, like, it's definitely not working as punishment, but it's actually working as negative reinforcement. And if there's actually a decrease in this behavior, it's because their sensory needs are being met for movement and for escape for the class. So, like, why couldn't we build in a sensory diet where they're getting those sensory needs met without having to hit a peer? Like, why are we not giving them an alternative where they can say, I need to move my body or I need a break? And then we can give them that negative reinforcement through the form of a break or through the form of like release of body tension in some other way. I especially think those of us who are over the age of 30 can appreciate this because if you've ever had to sit for a long period of time on like a plane or some other point, like there is a point where it actually becomes physically uncomfortable not to be able to move and stretch your body. And the more that I age, the worse that gets. And so it is this thing of like, why are we not just offering that? Like, we know that exists. Everybody remembers when they were a kid wanting to be able to physically move and not being able to because of the environment they were in. So, why are we not empowering that? Why are we not saying, A, you should want to be part of services? B, I should be empowering your own self advocacy so that you can ask for what you need and then, be better able to learn. Nobody's able to learn when they're in immersive situations. Like if I, put you in like I don't know, a box that was horribly uncomfortable and had loud sounds and bright lights and then was like, learn the stuff for your test. Of course you would learn terribly. The environment's not working for you. And we know there are lots of autistic adults who have made it very clear that the environment that they were in did not work for them, both as children and currently. And so if we know that's true, and we know that 70% of us are working in autism services, like, why are we not addressing environmental factors before we're trying to decrease someone's behavior?